I want to kind of dig down a little bit more on the kind of the process and procedure. So in your area, and we'll just say the areas you're in, those are outside of the college towns,
Yeah.
are the most liberal areas in the state of Indiana,
Hmm.
Hamilton County and Indianapolis, obviously. So dad comes to you and says, let's just say common story. Dad, unmarried father, comes in and says, mom's not letting me see the kid, or mom's being a gatekeeper.
Uh-huh.
You file a petition. I'm assuming for, you probably have a technical term for it, custody and visitation, parentage,
Hmm.
whatever it may be. What's the timeline, and what happens when you actually get into court for that first time?
Well, typically when a client comes into my office, they haven't even established paternity.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the state of Indiana, just putting your name on the birth certificate is not good enough. You have to sign the paternity of affidavit. So I usually have to, because usually when the child is born, they may have been there, but they don't know whether they signed the birth certificate or was this another document that was called the paternity affidavit. So we always have to first tell my clients, let's start there at the health department because that's where our paternity of affidavits are located. And if we can't find it there, and if it's not there because they didn't sign it, then we first have to file a petition to establish paternity along with establishing parenting time in custody and child support. And so that's generally our first process is make sure they have established paternity because many times these fathers have raised or helped raise children, but legally they have no rights because paternity has not been established. So that is
Okay,
pretty
so
much our very first start.
that's similar to the state of Florida. That's different in California, though. You're on the you to get on the birth certificate, you have to sign what we call the voluntary declaration of paternity.
Mm,
If you sign that, you have exactly the same rights as mom does. But sounds like Indiana is like the state of Florida. I believe
uh-huh.
Georgia is the same way, where you actually have to go to court essentially
Mhm.
to establish any sort of right to the child.
That's true. That is true.
Okay, and so you got to do the record search. You got to make sure the appropriate documents are filed. Or have been signed? What happens if that document is not has not been properly signed? Is that something you can go to mom and say, "Hey, we need to get this signed"? Is that something dad can do on his own, or do you have to get in front of a judge?
Well, yeah, you have to get in front of the judge to establish paternity, and DNA is not necessarily required. If mother agrees on the record that he is the father, then paternity can be established through testimony.
Mm-hmm.
However, if mother denies, then we do have to do the DNA testing. And then from that process, it could probably take anywhere from 2 to 3 months to kind of get this case in the courts and kind of resolved with like a preliminary order saying, listen, let's give him some custody rights, let's give him some parenting time, and then our final hearing may take up to like 4 or 5 months to get that resolved. Now, there's an issue. There could be possibly other issues is if paternity has been established and there's an emergency situation, we're going to get into that court within the next 10 days or so.
Yeah, that's one you got to be careful of. I'm sure, like in the state of California,
Uh-huh.
if you cry wolf, the judge doesn't take too kindly to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
And with emergency custody here, it has to involve something like violence, abuse, neglect. I have been, I'm guilty. I have been notorious because I have such a passion for fathers, filing emergency petitions when a father is coming in my office, he's crying. And you, believe it or not, these men cry more than you would expect because they're really
yeah,
hurt. They want to see their children. So I have been guilty of possibly filing emergency petitions when there has not been a neglect or abuse, but there has been just a withholding of the child. But I've been getting better with controlling my emotions.
I will say though, I mean, I'll just be honest with the viewers. I mean, the state of California is similar. The big one in the state of California that there's explicit language. If there's threat, the child's going to be removed from the state.
Mm,
So anytime there's connection to another state, anytime there's connection to another country,
yeah.
usually gives you grounds to get in. Depends on the court. Sometimes some courthouses are notorious for just granting every single emergency hearing, and then if
Hmm.
you get in front of them and don't have an emergency hearing, they tell you to go home. Others, I've seen nasty situations where they say you can wait the 2 or 3 months
Yep. Yeah.
to get